Oh, Sean, can you hear us now? Just to check. No. Okay. All right, I'm going to tear down the poll. Yeah, okay. I'm going to tear down the poll and we'll get started. This is being recorded, and so if you are having difficulties hearing, well, at least you can see what's on the screen here. If you're having difficulties hearing, there will be a recording that's available later, okay? So thanks for joining us this evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you, depending on where you are. I'm Mark Kaufman. I'm Blackboard's Senior Partner Software Engineer, and we're presenting on how to build a simple REST API web application from scratch. And let's see if I can get to the next slide here. There we go. Forward-looking statement. I don't believe I'll be doing any forward-looking statements, but if I should happen to, it's not available until it's available. And what I said was forward-looking. A bit about me. I've been with Blackboard for 5 years plus, and I was a former Learn admin and developer at CSU Chico. I'm familiar with your joys and pains as a Blackboard Learn administrator or a developer, since I've been doing it. I did it actually out in the field, and actually I work with a lot of you still today. So prior to Chico, I was a scientist engineer at Hewlett Packard. While there, I I developed that we got a patent for, and I don't know, that was pretty fun. I'm a grandfather, and I've run 6 marathons. I like hiking and gaming, and also I really like science fiction. That's me doing my K impersonation from Men in Black, and that device I'm holding up is to help you forget anything that you knew about previous means of integrating with Blackboard. We want you to use REST and LTI. And speaking of LTI, there's a couple of sessions. There's actually one session that's available twice. I think he's going 2 hours each. Eric Preston will be presenting on building LTI 1.3 Advantage applications. He might mention some REST stuff too in there. I think he has built some of that. Like I think he built I worked with him on the MS Teams integrations, so he did the majority of the work. So let's see. So agenda, what we're talking about this evening is a Django web application. It's an application that's it's a framework that is written in Python. It's easy to get and download. Just do a git search for Django or Google search for Django. It's got built-in security and session management, which is really nice. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Using BBREST, which is a Python package developed by Matthew Dekine. Matt worked with me on the speech to text. At any mistakes, it's Microsoft's fault. Matt worked with me on the 3-legged authentication part of the BBREST package just prior to DevCon, and he got some changes in there pretty quickly, so I really appreciate that work that he did. And then what we do here is we combine the two of them to have a little application that demonstrates using both the framework and BBREST. So we'll start with the demo. I decided to flip it so that we don't rush through the demo. You can kind of see how this works and what it does, and it might give you a better context for what we're looking at when we look at the code and go through the slides. So with that, we'll just flip over to a terminal, and so what I did is I cloned the repository to my I have a temp directory, and I just CD'd into it, and I set up an environment using the Python venv, and then I activate the environment, and then I install and I upgrade pip. Basically, I don't know why I did that twice there, but I did. You only have to do it once. And then the package WebLearn has the requirements.txt file in it, so you can that'll just pip will just pull down all of the requirements from the Python package repository. Okay, so how do you use this thing? You can see I've been practicing. You just, once you've got it there, you can just do, well, I'll just show you the BB-REST part of it. So you can go into Python, and I'm going to do some copy paste here because it's quicker and safer. Okay, don't look at that stuff secret. Okay. So you can just do this. So what we did here was we we've registered a REST application on the developer portal. We'll talk about that a little bit in the slides. My assumption was that if you're attending this presentation, you may have done that already. You register your application on the developer portal, you get a key and a secret, and then you need to install those on your Learn system, the application ID on your Learn system. And so here what we do is we set up our code, so we have the key and the secret available in a variable, and then we have the Learn fully qualified domain name. I have my Learn server running at Kaufman3011.dds.net, and then we create an instance of, well, up here you see we imported the BB-REST package. So now here I just create an object, BB, and I pass in my key and my secret and my HTTPS:// in that fully qualified domain name. So now I have a BB object, a BB-REST object that I can use to make calls to Blackboard Learn. When you instantiate the object, it actually goes and gets the access token for you using the two-legged authentication. So it makes a request to the token endpoint and gets a token and holds on to that, and it will refresh the token when it expires. So you don't have to write the code for the refresh. It's just there. So now you can do things like and that'll pull the users a page of them, 100, I believe there's 100 on a page. It'll pull the users from the system and put them into the response. Now the response, he does capture the status code, so you can see that if it's a 200, it's a good response, and then there's all the users that are on the system. You see we've got myself, M. Kaufman, we've got M. Kaufman student, and we have Marty McFly. I also like Back to the Future a lot. So that's just a quick show and tell of using the BB-REST package and how easy that is to use. It makes writing REST applications with Python a pleasure. Now the next thing you need to do once you have cloned the WebLearn Git repository is to set up your config.py. We've got a config template, but you need to actually, you still have it there. You need to set it up with your key and your secret so that the code will work. And then the other thing you need to do is manage .py is Django for manage this server code that I have locally, and manage.py, you migrate the application into the SQL database. You just do that once, or anytime you make changes to the models on the application, which this application doesn't have any models in it. So I'm just doing it because I use the SQLite database that comes with Django to store session state. Manage.py. Now I've already done it once, so I don't think this is going to take very long. Yeah, it's already run it, and then you can actually run the server. So here we are running on, I'm running on localhost, but I wanted this to be like running in a production environment. So everything is, as it's all with HTTPS and it's secure. So what I'm doing is I'm using ngrok to tunnel from a domain I have set up, www.avinet.com, to my localhost. So everything's working with HTTPS, and so now I can get a couple of browsers over here and show you the web application. So there's the home page. You notice it read it to 2-leg, and I'll show you how I did that earlier. So this, I split it into, Django comes with, it comes as it gives you a web project, and then you can create separate applications within that web project. So this project has 2 applications. It has the 2LO application and the 3LO application. So with the 2LO, I just do the basic authentication like you saw me do from the command line, and I get the user. So, well, first of all, you see on home, we've already made a call and we've got the system version. We made a call to this endpoint to get the version. You don't have to authenticate to do that, but so I just show that on the home page. So here we do get users, and it's pulling all of the users off the system using the 2-legged authentication. And because the system role of the user that I installed on the Learn system that is associated with the REST application, it's M. Kaufman, which happens to have admin rights. So it is going and actually getting all of the users off the system. But now with 3-legged authentication, what happens with 3-legged authentication is the user is required to log in to Learn to get an access token that is then only has the privileges and entitlements of the user that logged in. So that's why 3LO is more secure for a web application that's running in the cloud. So if I go to Who Am I, you'll see we're going to get redirected up here. It's going to actually go and send us to the Blackboard Learn system. And then I'm going to log in with my student account. Now what happens is I go back to my web application with a code, and then the web application uses that code to get an access token, and that access token only has the -student. So now with that access token, the web application can only do things with Learn that student account can do. So once I hit sign in, now we're back on our web application, and the REST call that was made was to the me endpoint /user.me, which will give you who I am. And so you see here that it got the M student because that's who I logged in as. So to show you that the other thing that web application is doing is you need to store that user's state in a session that is associated only with that user, because otherwise what will happen is the web application would get mixed up between, like if Scott would log in now and I wasn't doing that, then it could blow away my access token, and the M. Kaufman student wanted it would be him. So we need to store the information in session and then separate the users out that way. So you can see here, I'm going to log in with a different user. I'm actually going to make the request with a different user. So I go to Who Am I again. And I log in with Marty McFly. And you see I did the same call. I did /user/me to find out who I am. But in this case, me is Marty McFly. And I got a different user ID. I got, whatever system roles Marty McFly has. And in both cases, they only have the user role. But and you see Marty McFly has a different access token than M. Kaufman student. And the way I did this was I'm storing the information for the BB REST object for Marty McFly in session. So when Marty McFly uses the web application, he's using his access token. And when M. Kaufman student uses this web application, he's using his access token. And if somebody else logs in and tries to use the Who Am I or Get Courses, they would have to log in to Learn. They'd get an access token that was associated with their Learn account, and the web application would always make requests on their behalf to Learn. The thing I added, I think the last thing I added, I love coding, and so like I kept not wanting to make slides and just write more code, and I thought it would be nice. I added a piece of code that will log you out of Learn and wipe the session off of the web application, so that when you're done, you just do that. And now if somebody comes here and accesses and tries to do the Who Am I again, they'll have to log in and Learn again. So I think what I'm going to do is continue on so we can actually get to the point where we're looking at the code that makes all of these things work. So I'm going to shut down the browser and head over to the rest of the slides. Okay. So in case you forgot the agenda, because we did that before, once again, we'll talk about Django, we'll talk about BREST, and we'll talk about combining them again together. So I went with Django and as a application work for a few reasons, and then for securing it, you can do a search on the internet for Scott mentioned Google before we started. Just search how to get a SSL cert and secure a Django web application. There's lots of good hits out there because Django's been around for a long time. If you're running it just as it comes out of the box without somehow behind a secure SSL environment, you would get things like this where you can't use HTTPS, and we want to use HTTPS. So what I did, and Mark O'Neill did a couple of sessions where he presented on several different ways where you can get a domain name and an SSL cert that works. But here's what I did: was I use ngrok to, actually it's not reverse proxying, it's tunneling to Django on my local host. So I registered a domain name on DreamHost. I got an SSL cert there. I created a CNAME record to ngrok. And then I set up my ngrok account, which is a secure introspectable tunnel, and I set it up to tunnel to Django on my local host. I did a custom domain reservation, and I created the CNAME target to use, the one I got at DreamHost. And then I run this command. This took a little bit of the ngrok TLS region equals US host name equals, and so on and so forth. That took a bit of Google searching to figure out how I could tell ngrok to terminate remotely using a key and a secret that I had, or key and a full chain cert I had locally. So the ngrok server is terminating the TLS and then forwarding the requests onto the Django application on my local host. Let's see, but there's a lot of different ways you can do that. This is just a screenshot of what I did on ngrok. These slides will be available after the presentation, probably The PowerPoint was available before, but the PDF was available before. The PowerPoint will actually be available. So I made some changes, some small tweaks. That's just a screenshot of what you saw running in the background there. Basically, it's the tunnel, and then you get an actual. You can use the domain that you've got set up. It's actually the web server is running on your local box, and it looks like it's running on the internet. Any of you could actually go there right now to www.avinet.com and overload my Mac. I did put a note here that for this to work, I had to modify the Django settings.py. Django gives you good messages when you try to do something and you haven't set it up, and so it would tell me, hey, you don't have www.avinet.com in your allowed hosts, and then I would just go and change the code that it would be there, and then things would work. So I with Django for a few reasons. Other folks are using Flask, and so I thought, well, I'll do something different because both of them are rather popular. So I just wanted to have a demo of this code too. Also, you'll notice there's a little rocket that is there on their page when you start the server, and this is a spaced theme conference. So I thought using Django would be good for that. But actually, one of the main reasons is that if you're going to build a web application and put it up in the cloud somewhere, you want it to be secure. And Django says the website says they take it very seriously, and they help us avoid many common mistakes. So I just like that. And then also the session management, that was so easy to do, to save that BB REST object in session and to have one for one user and one for the other user. So I just found that pretty quick and simple, and I'll show you that code. It looks like I'm going to have time to go through the code, which is good. And then the settings.py kind of shows you what middleware it comes with. It comes with their security middleware and the session middleware, and then it has things like this cross-site request forgery protection and some X-frame options set up. So it's pretty solid. All right, now this is just going over setting up, registering a REST application on the developer.blackboard.com site, and then a little bit more about BB REST. So you have to register your application at developer.blackboard.com, and when you do, I got a big orange arrow pointing to the button that you click to get your application registered. We're not using LTI in this workshop. I just left that in Eric's hands because he's the expert on that. And then, but when you do register your app, you want to give any domains that you'll be running your application at, your web application at. So you can do localhost. You can do. I did www.avinet.com, of course. So. Once you've registered, you get application ID, a key, and a secret. You need to save off the key and the secret because we're not going to give them to you again, and we don't save them anywhere. So be sure you save off your key and your secret because you're going to need those down the road. Then when you figure your REST application on Blackboard Learn, you plug in the application ID that you got from registration, and you put in a Learn user that has the system role that has the entitlements that are necessary for the application, the web application, to work. And if you're using three-legged authentication, then all you need to do is a user with no system role, and that will work just fine because the user using your web application will be required to log in, and the token that they get will have the roles that they have. So if an admin logs into your web application, they have admin rights. If a student logs into your web application, they only have the student rights. With two-legged authentication, you want to be more careful and maybe tune the system role that you associate with this user to only do those things that the web application should be allowed to do. BB-REST is the Matt DeKine's package that we talked about, and there's the GitHub repository. It does some things. It automatically makes all Blackboard Learn REST API endpoints available for use. I've mentioned that before, but I just, that's one reason why I really like it, because Sean asked earlier about Phoenix DSK, and I'm thinking what I'll do now is I'll rewrite Phoenix DSK in Python, because all of the REST APIs are here. It's all there. I've got it set up for three-legged authentication, so that secures it, so that you don't have to, if it's running on a cloud somewhere, you don't have to worry about somebody getting on your Learn system and doing something they shouldn't do. And then the other thing with BB-REST is it has token management for both two-legged and three-legged, caches and refreshes the token when necessary, like when it times out. It obviates the need for writing a request to the endpoints, and it's under active development. Matt said to ask me that if you have any suggestions or requests for improvements, just use the pull request on GitHub to communicate with him that way about it. We went through this earlier, so I'm not going to talk about it much now. I think we're getting close to looking at the code point. That's just the steps I went through to install the app and get it up and running. Let's see, yeah, best of the best. I'll let you click the URL on your own. It'll take you to a clip from Men in Black. Let's see. So, okay, here we go. So here's an overview of where I made changes. In settings.py, we've got the applications configured there in allowed hosts. The urls.py does your routing for you. Views.py does your logic. And templates is where the screens are that are rendered. The one thing I don't mention here about Django is the models, and models are Django's way of mapping objects to database contents, and the only database bits I used were the session piece. There's not like separate objects that are used in this application that are stored in the SQLite database, but you can do that. So basically the way I look at this kind of application is the model is actually Blackboard Learn itself. It has the users, courses, enrollments, course content, and so on. So all of that data is over in Blackboard Learn, and what we're doing is we're accessing the data with REST API calls from the views. Haha, finally, the code. And we have a whole half hour, so I can, yeah, I think I'll go through the code and then we'll do questions. I'm not paying attention to the haven't been paying attention to the collaborate messages, but I'll come back to that after I go through the code a bit. So let's see, I'm trying to keep the speech to text going while I do this, so that if you don't have a good audio or you're watching this later and you're hearing impaired, you'll actually see what I'm saying. So here's the project, WebLearn, and you see here's the config file that we used. What I did for this project was, because Matt was actively developing it and I was needing to get things working here, I just imported his code directly into this project, and I would make changes to it when I needed to before he got to it, or then what I did was I pulled what he did back in. I think he's a little bit ahead of me now. So the definitive source for BBREST is Matt's GitHub repository. I have a copy of it here right now. I'll probably pull this out eventually, but it was nice for me to be able to watch how his stuff was working too. Let's see. Okay, so I mentioned, yeah, here's the project directory. I mentioned urls.py. So here's where we map your incoming requests. And you'll see there's the 2-leg and the 3-leg being mapped here. And then this little bit of code here, what it does is it redirects. If you just go to the root of the project, www.abinac.com, you get redirected to the root of 2-leg. And then in 2-leg, the path that's the root there with just a nothing there, and then that takes you to the indexed. And then if you look at your index, so views is the logic, and that's where the code actually lives, is in views. And so here we're in the index of 2-leg. What we're doing is we're getting, this is basically what I typed in the command line on the Python command line earlier. I get the BBREST object. Here I'm using get version, and when I did the example I did get users, and then I get the response JSON, and that's the version JSON. I just call it the version JSON, and then I basically put that into context, and I send that off to render. Django does a thing where they call it render, and you just tell it where to render what came from the request after you've done your work, and it's sending it off to index.html, and that's the web page that's in the templates, and it's here, and there's what you see. It's a mixture of HTML and Django syntax. So now let's go over the 3-legged. We just looked at 2-legged authentication. That's easy. 2-legged is easy to make calls, but I think what's interesting, really interesting about this project is the 3-legged. So we want to go and look at our views in our 3-leg, and here's the who am I we demoed. So we come in, and the first thing we do is we get the user's BBREST object off of the session, and if you've never logged in, it's going to be none. Okay. So what we want to do if it's none is we want to send you to learn to get logged in. That's the authorization code request, authorization code endpoint, and you'll log in at the authorization code endpoint, and then learn will send you back to the web application with a code. We pull the code off of the incoming request to our web application, and we then make a request to the token endpoint with that code to get an access token. So that's the code we're going to walk through right now, how that's done. So we got none. So I'm going to create a new BBREST object, and I'm going to pickle it. Python has a thing that's called pickle that basically takes the object and turns it into it's a string that basically can be stored on a database. So I pickle it, and I put that pickled object onto the session, the user session. And this is the Django magic right here, where I just use the session object that comes in the request. So I can pickle the BBREST and put it on session. And there's maybe a better way of doing this, but this was really simple and easy to do, and it seemed to work pretty fast. It wasn't slow at all. I think what it is the BBREST object itself isn't that big. So then what I do is the other thing I put on the session is a target, because I need to get back here after the user has authenticated, got the access code and then got a token. So the target is who am I? And so then I just say, okay, since we didn't have we hadn't come through and logged in before, we need to redirect to get an authorization code. So down here is the authorization code. So what we're going to do is we get our we unpickle our BB REST object. We do need to this regenerates, this builds out the object more than it was, and it's part of BB REST that we need to do this. And then what we do is when you make a request to the authorization code endpoint on Blackboard Learn, you need a redirect URI. And the redirect URI, we want it to come back to our web application. So we want to come back to our web application to the point where our web application gets the access token. So we build out the redirect URI to be the get access token, and reverse is just another Django thing that basically turns a name into a HTTP string. That it's a path that for the web application. So we do need to spell out that we're coming back here. So we're going to put HTTPS and get host here, and then the redirect URI, and then the auth code URL, the full authorization code URL is we're using, here's the trick where we use BB, the BB REST code that Matt added for this project was the get auth URL, and we basically send it the redirect URI, and now we've got a authorization code URL for the Blackboard Learn system from the BB using the BB REST code. So now we can redirect to that. So this is the point where you saw when I did the demo that it sent me off to Blackboard Learn to log in. And after I log in, because we set this redirect URI to get access token, after we log in, we'll get sent back to this piece of code. And this piece of code then will get the access token, call to the access token endpoint. And the access token it gets is particular for the user who logged in. It only has their permissions on the Learn system. So first thing we do is we get our BB REST object off of the session, unpickle it, build out the functions. We need to get the access token, we need to get the redirect URIs, build that out again. Then we pull the code that we got, because we remember when we came back from Learn after logging in, we had a code on the path to our web application as a parameter. So we get the code off the request, and now we're going to make a request to Blackboard Learn to get an access token. And so what we do, the way we do that is we basically build a new BB REST object. And this is the other piece of code that Matt wrote, where we send in our code and a redirect URI and the Learn fully qualified domain name. And so now I've got this BB REST object has an access token that is particular to the user who just logged in. So I put that on the session. I pickle it and put it on the session. And now here's the trick. Remember I mentioned the target view earlier? I wanted to be able to have this code be generic so that it wasn't hard-coded for the who am I. So in who am I put the target view as to be who am I. I set that on session. If you were to go to this other path for courses to get courses, I can just say The target view is courses, and then going through the three-legged authentication process will come back to courses. So that's what the target view is doing. And I think we have, I went fast. There's a lot of code. The code is all available. I'm going to put it here. Here's the BB-REST code by Matt, and here's the WebLearn code by myself. You can pull it all down and use it and play with it this evening or this morning, depending on what time zone you're in. And I think I'm going to stop, put away all of, well, I'll leave this out in case I want to point to it. And I'm going to look over here at the session. There's 20 of you, so if you each have a question, we can go for another 20 minutes. So are there, oh, here we go. Watch this. Questions. We have a question slide. Are there any questions? Are there any questions that I missed up in the chat? Dead silence. You all pulled down the code and are playing with it. Oh, good, Carlos. I'm glad. Yeah. Oh, Scott wants me to migrate it to Flask. Oh, Scott is migrating it to Flask. Okay, Scott, be sure to get all of that security stuff in there. Hey, thanks. I had a lot of fun writing this. This is the part of my job that I like. And I don't know, Sean, can you hear me now? Is that audio working for you? I guess not. Yeah, oh good. Yeah, so I think I'm going to say it out loud here because I think I said it once in another channel. I am going to take this application where it's at, and I'm going to do as much as I can to get the Phoenix DSK over here. I like this because I never got the 3LO stuff working the way I wanted to on the Phoenix DSK, and this is going to be easy to do now because of the BB-REST stuff. It's all of the endpoints are there, so it'll be a lot easier. Oh, and also Django has paging built into it. I haven't played with it yet, but I saw that, and I think that'll make it easy to page through. Like when I had one person try to use the Phoenix DSK, and he had like 1,000 DSKs, and so he had to page through those. That was that was interesting. The other thing I'm going to do is the session that we have in the on DevCon.org. Yeah, it should be simple. We wish. DevCon.blackboard.com has the session has. I have a discussion set up in there, so feel free to jump into the discussion and ask any questions, and I'll keep an eye on that at least for a week or two. I'm sure my day job will pull me away, but for at least definitely for the duration of DevCon, I'll be there. Okay, yeah. Yeah, it emails me when I post in my course, so. Well, we're at 10 till. If there aren't any questions, well, I'll just hang around for the next 10 minutes if anybody wants to chat. I told my family that I wasn't eating dinner until 7 o'clock. Oh, so yeah, let me show that to you again. I'm going to slow it down so that you can watch what happens. I think I can slow it down. Oh. What I'm doing here is I'm making certain I'm logged out, and I'm not. So I'm going to log out. So Carlos, here we go. Yeah, so what happens here is what you want to do with three-legged authentication is when the user clicks on the link, they're going to get sent to the and the BBREST code pretty much does this for you. It sends you to you use its code to go to the authorization to make the request to the authorization code endpoint of Blackboard. So if I click on this, oh, what happened there? Okay, let me try this again. Tell me my web app is broke. Okay, 3LO. It should be required to log in. There we go. Okay, you see what happens if you look at the URL up here. You see what's going on is it sent me to this learn system, but here it's we're going to ignore the web API gateway has to do with see here we're getting an authorization code, and then the response type is a code, and then the client ID is that's the application ID for the application. And then you'll see here, this is the trick here, is the redirect URI. After I log in, I'm sent back to my web application. www.avinet.com, three-legged, and I'm going to the part of the web application that then gets an access token. So the user is entering their credentials into Blackboard Learn, not into your web application. So that's where the student enters their credentials, is on the web app, on the Blackboard Learn system. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I put in my credentials here. Now what happens is Learn sends me back the web application with a code, and then the web application uses that code to get an access token, calls the access token endpoint. And then from then on, the web application uses that access token to make REST calls to Blackboard Learn. Scott has a really good page out on docs.blackboard.com. I was going to add this slide, but I didn't. I do it in my other presentation on Python and the Postman. But if you go to this, I like the site map. If you go to REST and three-legged OAuth, if you just read, it took me a few times, but if you just read through it a couple times, this flow basically explains everything that you need to do to make, I think, yeah, here you're getting the authorization code, and then the web application is, he says access code, it's access token or token endpoint, and then the token comes back, and then that's where it continues on. I'm going to throw this into chat. Let's see. If they ever enter incorrect credentials, it just stays on the BB page. And that's a good question. I haven't tried that. Let's see what happens. I'm going to log out, and then I'm going to go back to my web application. And I'm going to do 3LO again. And I think what happens if you enter bad credentials is you get redirected back to the learn login page, but the connection to the web application is shot. All right, what happens if I try to sign in with McGregor? I spelled his name wrong, so. Yeah, you see what happened here is I got redirected to the login page, but I lost all of that stuff that was a parameter that would get me back to the web application. So at this point, if you log in with bad credentials, you'd have to go back to the web application URL and start over again. And I don't know if there's a way around that. Oh, look at that. Boy. There may be a bug in my code. Because I'm finding myself logged in when I don't want to be. There we go. Yeah, see what happens is all of this stuff gets blown away if you use bad credentials. Oh, 7 new chat messages. Take me to the chat messages. We need a ticket for that. Oh, God. Okay, Scott, you write that ticket. If I pass the user, once they log in to Blackboard Learn the first time, then things would continue to work for them until they log out. I'm not sure if I answered your question. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question. So Sean, you're saying go here. On my web application. This is me. It shouldn't be that. If I pass the user to the web app after they log in. So I go here. Yeah, after they log in to Blackboard, they're always going to get sent back to this address. Also, the other thing I didn't really get into, there's a scope that you send when you do three-legged authentication. So this web application, the scope that I have set is read, so that even though I'm logged in as, say I log in as M. Kaufman, and M. Kaufman has admin rights, even then, from the web application, I could only do reads. I couldn't do writes. Yeah, that's right. That's right, Sean. You wouldn't have a lost connection issue after you do that. Oh, right, right. Yeah, if you were to do, yeah, right, exactly. Here, I know what you're saying. Yeah, exactly. If I do this, if I'm logged in to learn, here, let's do it in my Firefox browser. Oh, not preview, Firefox browser. If I do this, sorry, my fingers are going too fast. I'm here, and I log in. If I tell them to do that, so now I'm logged into Blackboard Learn. Now they only have to get, they do have to get the authorization code and the access token, but they don't have to log in to Learn because they're already logged in. So it'll make the calls to Blackboard, and the system, Blackboard knows they're already logged in, so it just does what it needs to do. So if we go here now, and we click on here, it won't ask me to log in because I'm already logged in to Learn. It'll do the redirects and whatnot, but yeah, Scott, I just thank you for doing this. I've always referred to this when I'm writing code. It's like, okay, this is what I got to do. You're welcome, Carlos, and thank you all for joining. Yeah, please do post questions in the discussion, and we'll follow up. Yeah. Well, you do need the code to get your code. English is fun too. Oh, yeah, it's a good story too. All right, you're welcome. Yeah, and a big thanks to, I don't know if Matt's on or not, if Matt joined us or not, but thanks to Matt DeKine. All right, thanks, Scott. Yeah, y'all have a good, well, it's 10 p.m. for Scott. I'm not sure where everybody else is, but y'all have a good night, morning, day, and we'll talk to you soon. You're welcome, Kevin. Good seeing you. You bet, Sean. And be safe. All right, I'm going to stop the recording and we'll call it a wrap.